and Coach.
All right. The title of this presentation is One Click Can Save a Life. And the question that we want to ask and answer today is, can social media save lives? If I were to tell you, before you ever heard anything of Beyond Clean and saw what we're about and what we do, if I were to ask you, can social media actually save a life? I wonder what your answer would be. I believe that one post on Facebook, one tweet on Twitter, one message on LinkedIn, one selfie on Instagram, one TikTok video can actually save a life. And I know you're sitting there thinking, like, how is that possible? Well, that's great. That's what we're going to do for the rest of our time, is I'm going to try to convince you. And not only is it possible, but we need your help to make it happen today. All right? So, when we say social media, I know there's an illusion or there's an assumption of what social media means. All right, so I'm going to show you a couple of slides about when people say social media in general, what you tend to think of. Okay, you get the idea, right? So if you look back though, 35 million views on that video, right? So who's watching that guy? Okay, 35 million times. The mom, right? Okay. That's one of the earliest viral YouTube videos, and I'm sure if there's 35 million views, some of y'all in here have seen that movie before, right? Okay. This one has 32 million views of its own, and there's a dog on a beach, so we know what's going to happen here, right? And that's it. 32 million views to watch this little puppy dog, cutely fall on the sand, right? So I know. This is what we think typically when we throw out, words like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, like we're thinking entertainment value. I've got one more video, actually is one of my current favorite social media videos, and it's on TikTok. Is anybody in here on TikTok? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. If you're on TikTok, I want you to come see me after this because I've got some Beyond Clean headgear that I'm going to hook you up with, but you got to show me your TikTok account in order to get it, all right? So first come, first serve, but only for TikTokers. Okay. And I'll explain more about TikTok here later, if we got time. All right, yeah, so 2014, dogs who fail at being dogs. Yeah, exactly right, okay? So here's my current favorite. I pulled this off of TikTok, and I thought this summed up social media probably better than any other ones that we'll see today. And this one has almost 500,000 views to date.
Time to check my social media, Bless me online. Hashtag bless life.
Okay. So, no one is going to argue, definitely not me, that there's not a lot of fun and silliness on social media. But what I am going to argue is that's not the only thing on social media, and perhaps more importantly, that's not the only thing that should be on social media. So just to summarize again here, if that's all it was, I would agree. We should not waste our time talking at a clinical education conference about sterile processing, patient safety, about social media. If that's all it was, dogs and funny videos, just read the comments and move on, right? And that's like another like random meme there. But That's the kind of random stuff that's on Facebook, right? So, the issue and potential here today, and the reason that I thought it was important to close out this conference talking about the impact and the power of social media to change our industries in particular is this. In this room, there's anywhere from 250 to 300 professionals. Hopefully today you're going to walk away with at least one aha moment, right? At least something that you didn't know about how to take care of your patients, about how to process instruments appropriately, how to be compliant. At least one of those aha moments. But even if every session you were blown away with the content, inspired, encouraged, ready to go out and fight dirty together, that's just 300 of you that were convinced, right? What about everybody else outside these doors in your hospitals right now, holding down the fort on the weekend, who were not here and did not have the opportunity to soak in the best practice, to understand the challenges around compliance, to see the tools and engage with professionals like yourselves to really move the quality needle? What about them? I love conferences, and that's the whole reason that we're involved in these types of things, because there is something special about bringing human beings together in one place. However, when we leave this place, can you duplicate all of these sessions and tell your friends everything that happened here? No. And if you just told your friends one at a time everything that happened here, or even just that one aha moment, there's only so many hours in the day, and you only have so many friends you actually talk to, as opposed, right, to your Facebook friends that all your people that you knew in high school and knew in college and haven't talked to in 10 years. But those are still the types of people who could benefit from the clinical knowledge and clinical education that has been shared at this very conference. And not only this conference, but every other piece of training and knowledge and education that you get exposed to at your fingertips, in your pocket, is the tool to promote that education every single day to not only 300 people, but thousands of people every day. Just imagine if every single one of the people in this room posted some type of clinical education on a daily basis through their social media channels, how much information and clinical sharing would happen. Just this group. We're not even talking about everything else that's going around the world. So that is the reason and the importance, I believe, of social media. But it's one thing to say it. I want to pull up this video to show you a little bit about what that looks like. Again, and you can't see those words there, but it says best practice, safety, and compliance. I believe what the power and the platform of social media gives us is exponential growth, and this is what it looks like. Okay, so that's a difference in just dropping 300 of those marbles out and saying, okay, now we've got 300 people who know something more than they knew this morning. If you start with 300 of those, and the exponential growth goes out from there, you can see the impact. You can see the potential to change the industry for the better, and to do so at a rapid pace. So, to summarize again, if this was all that social media was, let's shut down now, go back home, start reading the textbooks, and stop there. As I've said, I don't believe that's true. To show that in a concrete fashion, I'm going to give you a case study on the Beyond Clean podcast. For those of you who are not familiar with who Beyond Clean is and what we do, we started originally as a podcast. For those of you who don't know what a podcast is, it's an internet radio show recording, just audio only. But I want to tell you the story about this primarily to encourage and inspire you, again, to see social media, to see new media as a potential to expand the conversations that you're already having in your break rooms, in your classrooms, in the back halls of your operating room, those kinds of conversations can, do, and should be saving lives. So Beyond Clean real quick. In 2017, some random guy in Pennsylvania sent a random guy in Texas a message through social media, through LinkedIn. I was that random guy in Texas. The gentleman that you met this morning, Justin Poulin, was the random guy in Pennsylvania. He had been doing podcasting in the sports world for years and years. He happened to work in the sterile processing industry, and he reached out to this guy named Hank in Texas and said, Hank, I see you on LinkedIn, I see that you're writing stuff about sterile processing. Have you ever considered doing a podcast? And I was like, oh, I've not considered it, but I do appreciate the value of social media. I think there's a lot that could be said and improved on in that process. And so what did we do? We started Beyond Clean. It was just a podcast. It was just a conversation between guys who cared about the industry and wanted other people to care as well. Not that they didn't, but to connect the ones through social media who wanted to grow and to learn. So how did that happen? We identified early on that if it was just a show with us two, no one would listen. Okay? So the glory here about these conferences, right, is it's not 8 hours or 6 hours of listening to the same person. It's hard enough to listen to one person for 1 hour. Just imagine if it was one person for 6 hours, right? So we understood the power of this industry is not who's up here as much as everyone who's in this room, because we're bringing our own perspective, insight, subject matter expertise to these questions. So we saw this has got to be a platform for multiple interdisciplinary partnerships to educate. Who are those people? Sterile processing leaders, business owners, surgeons, inventors, manufacturers. I'm not going to read all of these, but all kinds of different insights and perspectives touch who we are as an industry and how we care for our patients. The mission statement for Beyond Clean early on was we want to be the central nexus for the people, the processes, and the products that are pushing the industry forward. In order to make that happen, we've got to connect all the people who are associated with all of those things, right? So we said we've got to talk to a lot of people, and we got to keep this interdisciplinary. What are the topics that we're going to talk about? One of the early conversations with Justin is he emailed me one night before we even recorded our first episode and said, Hank, what if we run out of topics? Because we were going to do a weekly sterile processing podcast and talk about half an hour every single week about a different topic. What if we run out of topics? And I said, Justin, we're never going to run out of topics. Number one, because there's a ton of them. But number two, because we're never going to run out of people. Right? Because if you talk to one person about a topic and you talk to somebody else, you're going to get a different conversation. Especially if you're talking to different types of people who are involved in the same process. An operating room perspective on a problem is going to be different in the sterile processing perspective. So we encourage each other early on that the potential topics are never going to run out. And in fact, the more topics and more perspectives that we can bring in, the stronger that education is going to be for the entire platform. The power of podcasting, as you know, is direct delivery across the globe all at once. You release a podcast episode or a social media post, and the potential, depending on how you have those posts set, public-wise, etc., you can go viral and reach the world in a day, in a moment. It can be delivered to email inboxes. It can be delivered to home screens, news feeds, anything that touches a screen. It can happen directly through technology, and that's what happened with the podcast. We began reaching the world almost immediately. That first month, we had 19 different countries listening to the podcast. We were pumped. We were like 500 people listening to these shows. Guys, this is going to be awesome. If you fast forward 2 years, tremendous growth, over 135 countries now listening to clinical education every single week. I haven't even mentioned yet, but the podcasts are all CE approved for sterile processing credit to drive that conversation again, to provide value. And And as you can see there, over 15,000 downloads a month at this point. To wrap in that global conversation again, a lot of countries, as I mentioned, 135, the top 10 of those were kind of surprising to us. You know, who would be listening and having sterile processing conversations similar to what we're talking about here in the U.S.? All over the globe, as you can see. And we were intentional early on in this to invite international guests on the show, because as one of our guests said, he's a gentleman from the Netherlands, he says, the bacteria do not need a passport to travel. They do not recognize international boundaries, right? So why do we? Right, the conversations we have in the U.S. about patient safety, there's a lot of overlap, and there should be a lot of overlap across the globe. A couple more social media metrics again. You can just see the growth there. I won't go through the numbers. I show this to say, if you would have asked somebody 4 years ago, hey, is there a place, is there a need for more education on social media and sterile processing? The answer could have been, yeah, maybe, but you know, who's gonna do that? We already got conferences, we got books. Like, why do we need any more education on social media where there's cute puppy dogs and there's random guys singing the Numa Numa, right? Okay, I'm going to transition out of the case study of Beyond Clean and talk a little more concretely about what's going on Facebook in particular. I know you've been asked to raise your hand a million times. I'm going to ask you to do it one more time, or at least a couple more times probably today. But who in here is a member of a sterile processing Facebook group? Raise your hand. Love it. Okay, okay. Who is a member of an operating room Facebook group? Beautiful, okay. And then who's a member of a surgical tech Facebook group? Beautiful, right? Okay, almost everybody. You're raising their hand, that's crazy. Okay. So I'm going to show some screenshots of some questions that were posted on these groups. Right, but I blocked out the names and the pictures, okay? So you're not going to be able to see if it's your question or not. But the reason I'm doing that is to highlight the kinds of questions, and even more so, the impact, the potential patient safety impact on the answers to those questions, right? So this is not a matter, and I'm okay, right? You don't have to get on Facebook. I'm going to love you anyways if you're not on TikTok, you know, right? But there are conversations happening on Facebook, and they are potentially and are impacting patient safety. So it's no longer an option in the 21st century to say, not going to engage in social media as a healthcare industry because it's a wild west, there's too much crazy stuff, there's fake news, we'll talk about that here in a minute. That's not an option, and I'm going to show you why, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how to address that. So just by the numbers, here are a couple of the largest sterile processing Facebook groups to date, and again, if you see at the bottom, just three of those groups, 41,000 members in just three of the largest sterile processing groups, and there's a lot more of those came from. The largest credentialing organizations or the largest certification organizations in sterile processing are just around that 40 to 50,000 member mark, right? So in just three Facebook groups, there's as many members as there are total certified sterile processing techs in the U.S., right? So huge numbers. It gets even bigger when we move to the OR. 45,000 members in one group, the OR Life. Who's a member of that group? Yeah, y'all gonna love this. Okay, I'm a member of that group too. A lot of fun things go on in that group. It's fun. So 104,000 in just three of the largest perioperative groups there. Right, the life of a surgical technologist. Anybody remember that group? Yeah. See y'all's faces. Oh, I wish I could see your faces. Okay. So yeah, everyone's sitting there thinking like, oh, he's going to screenshot my post. I know it's going to be there. But huge numbers. 104,000 people every single day are being educated, for better or for worse, somehow, some way, through these social media channels, right? So this is happening. And if you say that you care about safety for your patients and quality for your processes, we have to do something collaboratively as a group. It's too big for one individual, right? And it's too big even for the user. So I know we've got some manufacturers in this room, and it's very, if it's scary for social media in general for users, it's even more scary for manufacturers because it just gets crazy up in these groups, and I understand that. But if anyone knows their products, it's the manufacturer of the product, right? And as you see, a lot of the questions that are posted on these groups are IFU-based questions, right? Okay, so you've waited long enough. I've kept you in suspense. We're going to start looking at a few of these, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on every single comment, but I just, again, want to paint a picture about what's going on there. So there's some that are not as closely tied to patient safety, more process related. How does the new Da Vinci scope fit in your vPro machine? Is anyone having trouble with its wrap touching the sides and the wrapper continually having holes? Now the holes in the wrapper, obviously that's a big deal. The touching the side, that's more related to the fail load. But 22 people had an opinion on that, right? So I didn't include all the comments on the post, but I can promise you that they were not all the same 22 opinions, right? So whoever posted this, how are they to know what the right answer is? All right, this next one is even more clear, the patient safety implications here. I'm new to this, and I've been told different things about how to test the Cydex strips in solutions. What is the process for this? What happens if they get a wrong answer and they're improperly testing those strips, or what could happen? Infection, right? A lot of things. Just imagine if they take a response here and it's the wrong response, and they change their workflow and their practice, and they start improperly testing these strips. Hundreds, if not thousands, of patients could be impacted by this one question and by one answer. All right, does anyone high-level disinfect baloney dilators and Uvitech? Are they considered accessory? How do you process yours? I mean, same thing, pretty clear implications and tie back to the impact of patient safety here. I don't know why someone was sad about that question, but they were. Okay. In the old days, I love these posts, cannulated items like suctions were flushed with deionized distilled water for sterilization. This is no longer done. I can't find any information in the newest manual, right? So 29 comments again. So the next couple of pages, I don't think I include all the number of comments, but I tried to pick questions that had a lot of responses to again show the diversity and the engagement on these posts, because a lot of times if you click into these, which I hope you do after this talk, and you kind of get curious and say, so what are people saying out there? It's all over the map. All over from, folks just putting random answers. This is how we do it at our place, which is, by the way, in case you didn't know, that is not the answer that you should make any decisions off of. It doesn't matter what they're doing across the street. It matters the right way to do it, and who knows if that's the right way across the street. So that should not be a question unless you're receiving, sources for why they're doing that. Can you tell me how your department handles mistakes? I know we all make them. I don't want to be too harsh, but I also want accountability. So this is a good question, right? And there's a lot of these questions out there. I want a good insight. I want some crowdsourcing on how to improve my process. On the mistake piece, though, depending on what the mistake is, it can have a dramatic impact on patient safety. I noticed on the previous presentation at the bottom of the top 10 for 2020, the ECRI top 10 hazards. I don't know if y'all read the whole list, but top 10 was a potential for loose screws and bolts in equipment to cause severe injury to the patient, right? So if you've got a sterile processing technician who didn't realize that the screw on the rongeur was loose and almost about to fall out, or even more so that the retractor was improperly assembled, or there's a bolt loose on a sternal retractor, that can have a big impact in an emergent situation, right? So mistakes, even as Dr. Nichols said, they happen, errors happen, but how we deal with those, that's an appropriate question, and again, like it got a lot of answers. Can we run the Jergen balls through the STARAD? IFU said they should be steamed, either gravity or pre-vac, but it doesn't say not to STARAD. Just wondering if anyone has any more info. All right, so here's one. It's like, I read the IFU, guys, just so you know, but I still got a question about this. Can anybody give me an answer? All right, and 43 people said yes. I've got an answer for you. I'm glad you asked. Okay? Hey, by the way, if you recognize your own post, feel free to raise your hand and be like, hey, that was me. I worked in an orthopedic hospital, ortho spine, and total sports medicine. Surveyor came through and said they couldn't believe how much bone was in our sets. My question is, what are your processes? Several hospitals say they don't even spray their instruments before they hit decontam. Does your facility spray, soak, etc.? And what do you do for turnovers? Right? So, is bone in instruments a patient safety concern? Right? And if there's any type of error that is going to make the headline news, it's going to be dirty surgical instruments. And typically when they say dirty, it's going to be some kind of bone or debris. Well, this is big. And I know, guys, I love social media for this too, especially these groups, because we're honest with each other. And you got to give it to everybody who asks these questions. They're being honest. They're being open because we're in a safe environment in those groups. They didn't think some guy's going to be presenting on their post, right? But the fact is, patients, right, have no idea how many close calls could have happened just for bone. Like all of y'all who are in the perioperative suite, the surgical suite, and you catch it as the last line of defense and you realize, ooh, can't put this, got to send this back, I caught it. But just imagine if patients knew how close they came for all of the issues with bone and debris. I know if I was a patient not in sterile processing, I would be astounded and scared to death, right? Okay, GI here, I have a couple of questions. Channel checks, we do them one a day. I feel like we should do it each scope before a patient. How do you dispose of the buttons? And has anyone had any incidents for these? I really like this question. This is a good question. It's a process question. It can have, good and bad answers, but again, they're posing it to dig down into what is the best practice. Okay, this is a fun one. Sterile or not, and I know it's hard to see the photo down there, but that's connected to this post. Using a marker of any kind on the label of a sterile object. In this case, it was a pink highlighter. No pigmentation on the inside of the label. And I wish I had the comment count on this one, but I think there was quite a bit. Is it sterile? Is it not? And I won't make y'all answer that here. But on the right side there, local hospital has bone cement and hair debris in the sterile instruments and daily holes in pans and moistures. They're having a lot of troubles here and would love to know if this happens in your hospital, what do you do and what's causing it, flashing or processing in SPD. So that one again, tremendous impact, potential impact on patient safety and at the very least on the processes in your operating room. Y'all know how frustrating it can be to find hair in your tray, to find moisture in your trays. That can shut down a room quicker than anything, right? All right, so this is one actually that I was thinking about in the previous presentation as well. So you get a set of sterile instruments and it doesn't have a lock on it. Is it sterile or not? I mean, scientifically, is it sterile? Yeah, and that's what the comment section looked like. Right? So the question here is, can we use it? No. Right, yep. Sorry. The question they should be asking is, can we use it? Right, yeah. And so maybe like, yeah, they're getting at, well, is it sterile, is it not? Okay, well, if it's not sterile, then we won't use it. But technically speaking, it is, unless it's been popped, it's probably still sterile. But you can't use it because you don't know, right? That's the point. Even if somebody had eyes on it the whole time, the policy and procedure for the facility is if it doesn't have those external locks, you're not going to use it, right? Okay, do we have anybody in here who sells these? I don't know. Anyone want to raise your hand? Okay, in the back somewhere? Okay, great, okay. So, can these be reprocessed? No? Okay. All right, good. There was a lot of people who didn't know the answer to that. Is it okay to bring a tray into the OR immediately after it comes out of the autoclave to be immediately open, tray versus wrapped? And I'm not necessarily asking y'all to give me answers, but I want to show the fact that these questions are going on, and again, remind you that the diversity of answers is all over the map. So even if everyone in this room gets it right, there's enough other people outside who have a difference of opinion, experience, and education, that there's also wrong answers that are being placed here. All right, I'm on a travel assignment. They allow laparoscopic instruments to come up already assembled. I was literally sick to my stomach when the nurse argued that that's normal. They said they've been doing this for 20 years. Is it just me? Right? Okay. I have a question. We currently put our count sheets in the trays, and I believe this is wrong. We were told by the DNV this is good practice. What is everyone else to do? And I included the comments here, right? Outside, inside. Well, yeah, no, I'm not asking, I'm just saying two different answers, right? And what is this questioner going to do with those two answers? They're just going to pick the one that they agree with or that they want, right, to support their cause. So if you're getting a theme, I'm going to go through just a couple more of these. But the theme is, this is not, in this context, it's not a safe place to be asking patient safety questions blindly without asking for sources, clinical education, trusted sources for what that answer is. It doesn't matter who that person is, what facility they work at, how many years experience they have. If they're not quoting some kind of evidence-based best practice, their opinion on social media especially should not carry any weight. Can there be water in immediate use Genesis pans? I've been trying to find the answer, but no luck. Is this new? I've always thought that any fluid was a no-no. I want to stop here again to bring out another theme. I often ask myself, and you probably do too when you see these questions on these Facebook groups, have they called the manufacturer, right? Or have they looked up the IFU on one of those databases or in their binders? And maybe they have, maybe they haven't. We don't want to assume the negative here, but if they're asking questions and if they're saying that I can't find the answer, I bet you if they would have called V. Mueller and asked about this, they would have gotten an answer, right? If they got an answer, and I'm kind of jumping forward here, that's when you go to social media and you quote that answer from the source, from the manufacturer, and say, hey guys, just so you know, the manufacturer says, and here's a link to their website, and this is the IFU, and now you know. Right? That's how you drive best practice, but we'll get to that here in a second. I need to see if anyone has information on purchasing and the IFU for sterilizing a thermometer. When doing homographs for open heart and cryographs for fem pops, we need a sterile thermometer. Please help. Again, so that's another good question, because they're looking for the IFU and they're crowdsourcing for information. All right, we got a debate going on. This is a fun one. 188 responses to this one. Do y'all submerge your striker batteries in total joint sports drills in the sink. You can tell this is from Texas because they're saying y'all. All right. And you know, they weren't the only one having a debate. Evidently, Facebook had a debate too. 180 people said, yay, no, kind of, not anymore, used to, now you can do this, da. All right. Question time. I got a rep. Oh, this is a good one. I got a rep that brought in a tray and has submit caked on in one spot, not on the instrument, but actually on the tray itself. Does anyone have any suggestion to get the submit off? Thank you in advance. Now, I know submit is everywhere, guys, and I get this question all the time through the podcast and through the email channels. Everyone's always asking, how do we get rid of cement? Like, what's the answer? And again, like, we see this all the time on social media. I'm looking to replace our instrument washer and SPD. What company styles are you using? We currently have blank, and we have had nothing but trouble. Good, so that's a good crowdsourcing question. I wouldn't like necessarily throw out names like that on Facebook, but that's a good question. Hello, everyone. Question: I can't find any literature that states if sterilization tape can be used inside of an instrument set. Who's had that question before? Just kind of come up in your work, right? Great. Our facility recently purchased small sterilization bags. The IFU for the bag says to seal the bag with sterilization tape. Can this tape be used inside of set? Does anyone have literature for this? So that's a good question, right? Because what are they asking for? They're not asking for an answer, or they're not asking for an opinion. They're asking for literature. They're asking for something concrete, again, from the manufacturer that says this. How do you handle this situation? I saw a coworker soak power equipment before break time. It's a tattletale here. I took it out of the water as soon as I noticed it. As soon as he saw it was taken out, he put it back in for soaking. They've got some teamwork issues here. Another coworker soaks the batteries. I said something in the past to them, but nobody cares. I don't want to keep saying anything. I'm not their supervisor. Act your wage, right? So 113 comments on this, and anytime there's drama on a post, the comments just explode even bigger, right? So if you want people to respond to your Facebook post, sprinkle in a little bit of drama. This is important, though, again, and I'll talk about drama like here real quick just because it came up in this post. Drama impacts patient safety. That's not the title of this talk, that's not the theme of this talk, but co-workers and getting along with them and navigating these situations in terms of your process can save lives or can create harm. So don't think it's just a personality, I just don't get along with that person. It does have an impact for patient safety. You've got to address that drama. I'll give another talk on that another time. All right. I know what my gut is telling me, but I just need to hear it from others in the same profession. I love when the posts start like that. When processing loaner instruments such as EET navigation, do you follow the IFUs? Or what the sales rep says? I'm the only certified tech here. My manager is not certified. She believes everything that they tell her. More drama, hence the comments. I get in trouble for saying that the IFU, help me, right? So it is a plea for help. And it's clear that this person, in asking this question, needs a little bit more education and insight about the power of IFUs versus reps. And I don't know if a lot of people are saying that in these kind of settings, but just so you're aware, don't listen to the rep. Ultimately, listen to what their IFU says. In the best of all worlds, they should be saying the same thing, right? But we know far too many times they're not saying the same thing, or they're not saying all of the things that you need to know. So the IFU is your gold standard. Can anyone help me? I'm working with a Striker product. I believe these two parts don't get put through the washer, but there's nothing stating that in the IFU, and there was a photo that was associated with that. This one actually has some follow-up on the right side. Is this allowed to be put into a set? We sterilize them in pill packs, but I saw this group disapproval about them being put in a sets. Why? And they thanked everyone for their comments. And I let them know what we decided to do. So Let me click through these actually. All right, so last one's here. Do y'all put these through the washer or hand wash since they don't have any patient contact? And I need some help. Can anyone give me a link to information about transporting clean pill pack items in dirty biohazard bags? Right? Yeah? So, if we view social media only as entertainment, then you can get entertained by some of those questions, right? And I know many of y'all who raise your hand in these groups, you're just there for entertainment. And that's okay. Right? There's nothing bad about entertain. I love TikTok, and that's why, because it's entertaining. But I hope I have shown you through this that that is not ultimately what sterile processing or what social media can and should be. That is a part of it. I'm asking us, and I'm telling you today, those conversations are going on. They need correct, sourced, clinically safe answers. So really and truly, in walking out of this session, you should understand that social media is a question from a person. It's addressing these users' information. It goes both ways. You see the arrows on both sides. It ultimately touches a patient. This is the power. This is the impact. This is the value of social media. And it's happening whether we like it or not. Even if you don't agree with the Facebook group post or how Facebook is used, etc., those questions are happening. Patients are being impacted by those answers. So what are we to do about it? Well, as you know, there are dangers to social media. And I mentioned it earlier, but we'll talk briefly about it here. The primary danger is fake news, right? If we're giving incorrect opinions, which there is such a thing as an incorrect opinion when you're talking about clinical practice, right? If you're giving incorrect information, if you're giving information maybe from an old IFU or from a previous generation of a standards document, that is, quote unquote, the definition of fake news, right? It's not true. It's a danger to the patient ultimately, and it's a danger to the professional who asked that question because they have been given something that could hurt them as a professional. It could hurt their health system, their department, and again, the patient. All right, so what is the solution? I believe part of the solution is viewing social media as the means that we get information to the masses. It lets each of you, like we gave the case study about the Beyond Clean podcast earlier, right? And that wasn't just to talk about a podcast. That was to show the power of one person, two people, a group of people to come together and say, guys, we want to get correct information out to the masses. We want to get clinical education that's sourced, that's evidence-based to the masses. Social media is your tool. How much do you pay to get on Facebook? Free. Instagram, free. TikTok, free. Snapchat, free. Twitter, free. Almost every single one of these social media platforms are free, just like the Beyond Clean conference series. But the social media platforms out there give each one of you a tremendously powerful tool to drive and extend correct information, true news, out to the masses. I love this quote. This is actually from one of my sales reps when I was a sterile processing manager in Kentucky. And he would tell us all the time, not one of us is as smart as all of us. And that is the moral of the social media story, is no one's opinion should be the final opinion. It should be crowdsourcing best practice, sourced to industry standards, sourced to textbooks, published guidelines. So how do we win this war? First, we have to realize that there are people who work with us today, or maybe work across the street, who are drowning. I had maybe 20 screenshots, but these are people who have real questions. Like, they're not coming to social media to transparently ask this question for fun. They actually need an answer, right? So these people are out there, they're struggling with these questions. They felt the best place to go with that question to their peers in these Facebook groups, but they're drowning because they need an answer. Patients are depending on the right answer. I believe even in light of and in spite of the dangers of social media for fake news, it is a powerful and can be a powerful life preserver to the people who are drowning in areas and in places where they may not have the opportunity to come to a conference like this, right? Or they may not have the tools or resources, the time off. They may not even know about it, right? This is how we engage those folks who have patients under their care every single day, not just once a year at an awesome conference. Almost done, guys. All right, so what's the strategy if you're taking notes or if you're going to take pictures with your phone? This is the slide to focus on. Subject matter experts must engage. If you don't like social media, but you know what you're talking about, find a friend in here who loves Twitter, and y'all partner up and you can tell them all the right answers and they can tweet them for you, right? But almost all of y'all raised your hand and said you're already in these Facebook groups, right? And if you're coming to conferences like this, it tells me that you're already engaged in clinical education. Many of you have credentials, as we found out this morning. All y'all raised your hand about the degrees and your certifications and such. You have a level of clinical understanding that is not common across the industry and definitely not common when you move to social media. You've got to use that power and that insight for good. Okay? We've got to help our manufacturer friends in this room put an end to the myth that social media is only for marketing. All right, so this is one of my soapboxes. We've got to change that idea that you go to social media for advertisement, you do ad buys and marketing, and you tell about new products. At the end of the day, if that's all we view social media for, we go back and read the comments, we move on, what are we here talking about? But as you saw, that's not how the users are using social media. They're asking clinical questions, they're asking patient safety questions, and we have got to continue to convince our manufacturer partners that they've got to jump in the pool to help us to save these folks who are drowning. I believe that social media is the mechanism to reach users instantly, constantly, and in an engaging format. Engaging is critical here. It will not do, and I have nothing against the AAMI guidelines, the ARN guidelines, etc., but if we're just cutting and pasting page after page into social media, number one, that's copyright infringement, but number two, it's boring, right? The way that information is consumed on social media is different in the way that it's consumed at a conference or in a school. It's got to be short, concise, engaging. It can even be funny. There's a great group out there that I'm sure some of y'all have seen called Sterile Processing Memes. It's on Instagram, and all they do is memes about sterile processing, and it's hilarious. So if you're not following, go check it out. But even those humorous contexts can help to educate the industry. All right. So the question that you need to ask yourself, and I hope that you're going to answer in the way that I want you to answer, is what are you going to do with your clicks? Are you going to save lives? You're going to help others save lives, even if you're not the subject matter expert, like I said, but you know someone who is, and they've got answers, and you know that you read an article somewhere that is the answer to that question. You can share that article with the person who asked it. That's the way that you drive improvement in the industry exponentially faster and farther than anything out there today. Finally, one more thing. I'm going to be hosting a couple webinars over 2020 talking about how to use social media as a clinical professional. So stay tuned to the Beyond Clean pages for that. And I believe you are dismissed. Thanks, guys.
Hank, thank you so much for a great wrap up to the Beyond Clean virtual conference today. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to ask everyone one quick question before we wrap up for the day. Wouldn't it be cool if there was a film series or a documentary or something like that that spotlighted the sterile processing industry? Well, I've got some exciting news for you. The Beyond Clean team would like to invite you to join us for the world premiere of a new film series we're calling Beyond the Tour. It's featuring stories of innovation and disruption in the healthcare space. We take Beyond the Tour and we spotlight industry innovators and disruptors in the sterile processing space. And we explore educational themes like informed consent related to medical device reprocessing, public awareness of the challenges in our industry, industry disruption in medical device reprocessing, and the impact that new technologies can have on both clinical education and industry guidelines. Beyond the Tour episodes 1 and 2, featuring Anderson Sterilizers and Innovative Sterilization Technologies, the manufacturer of the One Tray, are airing next week, Thursday. So grab some popcorn, get your family members together, hop on a comfy couch, and join us on Thursday night for a sterile processing movie night. Again, next Thursday, May 21st at 7 p.m. You can certainly find more information on the Beyond Clean social media pages in the coming days. Don't forget to register. It's going to be a really fun first movie night in sterile processing that I've specifically heard of. So certainly join in on the fun. On that note, I want to thank everyone for the hard work, the passion, the sweat, the commitment to this industry. We see you, we appreciate you, and we will keep working hard here at Beyond Clean and in partnership with CCI. And I know the folks at 3M are going to work hard to bring you the important tools and the information that serve you in your roles. So from our entire team, we encourage you to keep fighting dirty, and thank you for joining us for today's virtual conference. We'll see you all online soon.